Welcome to the seventh episode of Winning Ways, presented by the Washington State Football Coaches Association. Quick reminder for coaches out there, if you haven't signed up, it's not too late to join. Sign up at washcoach.net. Tons of reasons to do it. One is to be part of this amazing fraternity. Another thing is head coaches like Coach Try here. You get to vote in the coaches poll this year, which is a pretty cool thing. We've had great participation in the last few weeks. By the way, Coach is, by the Coaches Association, ranked number one in the state for 4A. Also ranked number one for all classifications by Max Prep. So anyway, go ahead and sign up, and you also get the ability to be Coach of the Year, have your players in the All-State game. The Terry Ennis Scholarship is available. Coach Try played for Coach Ennis. There's millions of dollars insurance. So if you haven't signed up, please do so quickly. We'd love to see every coach that's a middle school or high school coach in the state sign up for that. So, all right, brief intro on Coach Tom Try. He's in his 21st year as the head coach at Lake Stevens, and he served for 6 years as an assistant coach at Lake Stevens before that. So all of his coaching time has been right there, purple and gold all the way through and through, Vikings for sure. He has amassed in that time 77.5% winning percentage. He is 176-51, including 4-0 this year. Of that 4-0, his first game of the year, he hosted Sumner, the reigning state champ for 4A, had an awesome game, beat them there. And then week 2, he's got Bellevue, perennial state contender in 3A that, he won that one as well. So he's come right out of the gates, playing some tough competition. He's won 13 league championships, 12 in a row. And during that time, from 2014 to 2024, he had a 62-game winning streak in Wesco 4A, which is pretty spectacular. He's reached a state title game 4 times, lost the first 2 of those. And prior to his time, Lake Stevens had been there twice and lost those. So they're 0-4 for Lake Stevens in their first times to the state championship. But in 2022, he flipped the script on that, and he won his first state title. And then he went back-to-back and won it again in 23. So 2-time state champion. And it may be more impressive than all of those. He's the 4-time Lakewood High School passing tournament 7-on-7 champion. He's won some lineman challenges there too. It's been fun seeing you there and competing against you there. I might touch on that in a little bit and see the importance of that to your offseason as well. And then some awards that Coach Try has won. He's a 6-time Coach of the Week by the Seattle Seahawks, 2-time District 1 Coach of the Year. He's the 2020 Seahawks Coach of the Year for the whole state. In 2016, he got to coach in the U.S. Army All-American Bowl. Pretty awesome experience to be able to do that. And then in 2022 and 23, he was the Everett Herald's Man of the Year in Sports. So pretty spectacular honor because that covers a wide variety of things, professional sports and all kinds of stuff. And so lots of honors coming Coach Try's way, and he's deserving of all of those things. So brief introduction there. Coach, is there anything else you'd like me to add?
No, I think you hit on all of it.
All right. So I did mention kind of jokingly a little bit because maybe self-serving here, but the 7-on-7 passing tournament, I started that in 2008, and Lake Stevens was one of those first schools that was there. And 8 schools came to that first year. You and Bothell and Kings and some of those schools came in, and then every year thereafter. And it's a highly competitive tournament. It's a lot of fun, and you've won 4 of those and been in several other championships there. And just tell me about your off-season program and what are things that you value. And I've talked to some coaches that don't put a lot of stock in 7-on-7 and other things because it's not real football. There's no blocking and tackling. But tell me about your off-season and why maybe 7-on-7 has been a big thing for you.
Yeah, well, we usually start our off season in January. We give the month of December off to our kids. Hopefully we're still playing in December. And we like to give them the winter break off. And then once winter break is over, we come back and we start lifting after school 3 times a week, pretty much January through April. And then come April, May, and the first couple weeks of June, we start our speed and agility sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we're lifting 3 times a week, and then we do speed and agility in the evenings for kids that are doing spring sports. Obviously, don't want to interfere with spring sports. We want all our kids. We want to promote other activities and sporting events, whether it's wrestling or basketball in the winter, or track and baseball and other activities or sports in the spring as well. We got some kids doing lacrosse and things like that. So we do them in the evenings, so kids still have an opportunity to come to our weight training or our speed and agility sessions. Uh, then, so we're pretty much just speed and agility and weight training all the way up through June. And then every spring, or I guess it's June, so it's really not spring, but we do an 8-day spring camp right before school gets out. That kind of prepares us for our summer team camp that we attend every year. We've been to Central for about 7 or 8 years, then went to Eastern for I think 6 or 7 years before Eastern ended their camp, and then went to Western Oregon and then back to Central again last year. So I think camp's a huge part of us just getting prepared for the season. So we love going to camps every summer. A huge part of team chemistry and team building in that off season. And once once team camp is over, we're right back into the weight room again for the rest of June, July, and August before we start our season back up. And again, it's pretty much just 3 times a week with our speed and agility sessions continuing throughout the summer on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Hired a new strength and conditioning coach this year who's done a really wonderful job of getting our kids ready for this season. And so we're really excited about just our kids being in great shape and really just a big emphasis this year on mobility and just stretching and pieces that we didn't do a very good job of in years past. I think we had a little bit of an injury bug last year, and so we spent some time this off season really reevaluating what we were doing in the off season and how we could try to help to prevent more injuries. Some of the soft tissue type injuries, the hamstring pulls, the ankles, the knees, just things that we could try to maybe prevent by increasing the amount of stretching and mobility and doing some of those things extra that we hadn't done in years past. But anyways, that's pretty much what we do in the off season. The 7-on-7 that we run I think it's important for us. And I'm old school. I agree that 7-on-7 is really not that important in the grand scheme of things, because you can develop some bad habits with your quarterbacks who stand there and hold the ball too long in the pocket, which is not very realistic. There's obviously no hitting, so the physicality piece is a little bit different as well. But I also see a real importance, couple things that we feel are important about those 7-on-7 events. One is, if you want to be able to throw the ball, it's a great opportunity to get some practice in before the season starts. The timing, the chemistry piece with your quarterback and your receivers, and even more importantly, your defense. Being able to line up in different coverages that you may not get to practice a whole lot during the season, because you might see run-heavy teams throughout the season, and so you're not spending a whole bunch of time on your coverages. Well, that's a great opportunity for us to mix in our cover 3s, our cover 4s, our cover 2s, and things and our man coverage that we'll run. So we mix that up, and it does a really good job of us getting prepared just for what that passing game might look like on Friday nights once the season starts. The other important piece I really enjoy about the Lakewood tournament is we bring in linemen too. So you get the lineman challenge going. So the moms are there. They're setting up the tents and all the food and the snacks and all the water and Gatorade for the guys so that they're staying hydrated throughout the day. It really becomes a team and family event. And so it's important, and it helps build that camaraderie. It helps build that competition or that competitive spirit that we want to have instilled when we start up in August. And so I think that Lakewood we don't miss it. I don't think we've missed since 2008 or whenever the first year was when you started it. And those are the main reasons for it, is just getting our guys mentally and physically prepared for the season before the season really starts.
Yeah. And even a couple of years ago when you won your first state title, it was a rematch in the state championship. You played Kennedy Catholic in the 7-on-7 tournament there as well that same year. So kind of fun to see that, competition there. You mentioned,
and we actually lost to Kamayakin in the goal line challenge at Eastern that year. Mm-hmm. And then it ended up beating them in the semifinals. So there are definitely some similarities and crossovers there for sure.
Yeah, and just seeing those teams, you're like, hey, we may see them again. And you've already seen their competitive nature and gotten to know their guys a little bit. So You mentioned the strength and conditioning coach and really focusing on soft tissue issues and I'm assuming it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday is lifting, and then it's the Tuesday, Thursday is the speed and agility. Can you touch on one, what you have your strength and conditioning coach do, and maybe even like, is that a guy that's part of your regular staff, or is he just for that? And do you have a stipend for that? Maybe so other coaches can kind of think about that. I know that was a position I was always trying to get. I was in the weight room all the time, but that's not my passion and strength as much. So I wanted to hire a guy for that, right? So tell me about the value of that and kind of how you set that up, if you could.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we've been running weight our weight room sessions 3 times a week really since I want to say 2007. Uh, but we've also been doing our speed and agility really since about 2008. That first year we went to the spread offense, we recognized that we needed to get a little faster and have our guys just being able to be a little bit more mobile, being in the spread up tempo, no huddle offense that we run. And so in 2008, we hired Velocity to run our speed and agility training, and Velocity was with us until 2010, and then they went out of business. And then we started using SPT out of Everett a few times, not every year, but I think probably 6 or 7 of the previous years we used SPT. And then ran into Deshaun Harrell, who was on my staff, who had been at Skyline and Issaquah, and he had been their strength and conditioning and football coach at those programs with Jervis at Skyline and then Buddy Bland at Issaquah. Well, he just happened to be living in Lake Stevens, and he came to me before last year's season started and said, "Hey, I'm living in Lake Stevens. I'd love to be a part of your program." And so we hired him as an assistant football coach. He and Kirby Kinchin coached our defensive backs. And then this last offseason, we had used SPT in 2024 for our speed and agility sessions. I ran the strength program, me and Coach Dinwiddie. And quite honestly, it was just too much time. Coach Dinwiddie and myself, with preparing all the workouts and being there every day. And trust me, we're still there and we still do those things. But it was great to be able to hire a guy that's, like you said, special, like that's his specialty, that's his profession. Mm-hmm. And so we hired Diesel, or his nickname is Diesel, but Deshaun Harrell, our assistant coach, to run our weight room and our speed and agility sessions for this. Well, I guess it would have been in March when he was officially hired to be our strength coach. And he took over the weight room for us, and then he took over our speed and agility sessions in the spring and summer this year. And he just did a tremendous job of just getting our guys prepared mentally and physically. He's the one that implemented the extra stretching and mobility pieces that we were kind of missing. And I just couldn't have been happier with just the results of our guys when, we're getting ready to play Sumner week 1, state champion. And I remember last year when we played them at their place, we probably had 5 or 6 kids. It was about 85 degrees down in Sumner that year. But it was hot, and we had, I think, 5 or 6 kids cramping up even by the second or third quarter. And I realized, man, we didn't do a very good job of getting our kids physically ready to play against these guys. And so that was a huge emphasis for us this year, knowing that try to learn from our mistakes. And so that was one of the motivating factors for hiring Coach Deshaun Harrell and to be a part of our program, not just as a football coach, but really his expertise is strength and conditioning. And so we did give him a stipend as well, which we've always done with either SPT or Velocity or any other outside organizations that we've used. We use that from our fundraising money through our booster club. But it was a big piece for us because it allowed Coach Dinwiddie and myself more of an opportunity to focus on scheme and some of the semantics of what we're trying to run with our program, as well as just dealing with things with the kids and not just the strength and speed and agility elements. Mm-hmm. And so it gave us a little bit, it took something off our plate and allowed us to focus more on football and not all the other things that are required of a head coach that people don't really tell you about that are required of a head coach until you realize, oh crap, I got to do this and I got to put this fire out and I got to talk to this organization and this parent group. And it gave us some more freedom and flexibility this summer, and it allowed us to be a little bit fresher when the season started. So we've been really happy with this current format. We hope to do it again next year.
And I think that will add to longevity for you as a coach and Coach Dinwiddie and any head coaches out there. I mean, we can try and do it all, but there's a lot of wisdom in hiring people that are smarter than you in certain things, and also putting things on other plates so that you can focus on the things that are more important for you. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
good stuff.
100% right.
So you mentioned when you went to the spread in 2008, and I want to get there in a moment, but you've kind of evolved. Like you played in the wing tee for Coach Ennis back at Cascade High School, which, by the way, it wasn't on the team you were with, but he was the last big school, 3A or 4A school, to have won a state championship in Snohomish County until you did it, and there was a 30-year gap there. So kind of a cool connection there. But you went from wing tee, and then when you first were at Lake Stevens, you're I pro, run a lot of counter and play action, those kind of things. And so I want to get to that evolution, and I've heard maybe it's Tony Franklin's system and so forth. You went to an '08, and then how that has evolved over the years, and you've tweaked it and modified it a bit to be who you are today. But before we get to that part, are there things that you learned from Coach Ennis? Maybe not the offensive scheme necessarily, but just the way he coached and ran a program, things that you learned from him that have impacted you as a coach today.
Absolutely. Just beginning with work ethic. You just never want to be outworked or outprepared. And that was one thing I definitely took from him as a player. I played for Gary Price before Terry Ennis, and Price was a great man too and a great football coach. But I noticed right away when Ennis came in, just the amount of work ethic that is required behind the scenes that nobody really talks about, but you see it and you feel it when you're a part of it, and that becomes part of that daily grind. And we talk about the daily grind every day in practice in our own program, the working in obscurity, right? Like doing the things behind closed doors that people don't realize that you're doing. And I think that's a huge part of why we've been successful is just being able to grind day in, day out during the off season, during the season. So I definitely took that from Coach Ennis. Uh, Hiring great coaches, I think Coach Ennis did a really good job of that as well. Took me a few years to get going and realizing that you have to hire great coaches, and I think we have the best staff in the state. Coach Dinwiddie is, I think, the best D coordinator in the state, and we got a great linebackers coach with Klosky, and our DBs coaches with Kinchin and Harrell, and our offensive side with Coach Deshawn, coaching the old line, Coach Sackett with the running backs, Coach French and Pester with our receivers, and Coach Widman, who's been with me, I want to say 15, 16 years now, has been our quarterbacks coach. And I think in those 15 or 16 years he's been with us, we've had a first team all league quarterback 14 out of those 15 or 16 years. And the one year that we didn't have a first team all league quarterback was a second team all league quarterback. And that was our first year winning the state championship in 2022.
Wow.
So we've had I've been blessed with great coaches, and that's just something else that I didn't learn that as a player playing for Coach Ennis, but I taught when I first got into coaching as a young assistant. I was actually at Seaholm for 2 years, Bellingham for one, Meadowdale for one while I was student teaching in the Edmond School District, and then I've been at Lake Stevens ever since. But I did get an opportunity to talk with Terry while I was at Seaholm, and then at Meadowdale for a year before he retired. And he's a mentor, right? He paid it forward and taught me a lot of just that daily grind, being able to keep working, trust in your instincts, trust that you're doing the right things for your program, and you may not win every game, but you're going to win a lot of them, and you're going to have continued success. And so those are the values that we've tried to instill in our own program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hiring great assistants. I mean, no head coach can do it on his own. You mentioned Coach Dinwiddie a couple of times. I got to coach against him in my early years at Lakewood when he was the head coach at Granite. So I think having an assistant also that's your right-hand man that knows what it takes to be a head coach, but is just all in on being the best assistant. And he's won District Coach of the Year as an assistant coach as well. So something for the Coaches Association. He has volunteered and helped set up things at the Glazier Clinic and things. And as an assistant, he's been very involved in the Coaches Association. So if you're an assistant coach, volunteer, help out. There's ways that we'd like to get you guys involved as well. So thank you for sharing that. And staff is always important. And you've got some great ones there, no doubt about it. Now, the transition going from playing in the wing tee, being I pro and kind of downhill and punching guys in the mouth, run the football, and you had this revelation that maybe you had some skill kids, you had some speed, maybe weren't as big and physical as some of the teams in your league back in the day, and you want to do something different. And several of the other coaches I've talked to have had a similar transformation along the way and took their staff and went somewhere. So can you tell me about how you made the decision to go to the spread, who you went to, what you did, and then how you've tweaked it to be your own? Because your version of it isn't exactly the same as ones I see other places today. You do a great job with the fly sweep and the play action off of that and the screen game. And so tell me about your transformation offensively and how that first started.
Yeah. Well, 05, 06, 07, we were an I team, and we were good. We went to the state playoffs in 06, lost to Bothell. That was the first year that we had made the state playoffs in my tenure. Uh, but in 07, we were even better than we were in 06, but we had a couple of key injuries, and one of them was to our tailback when we were in the I. And I realized that year how reliant we were on certain positions. We wanted to run the ball and pound the ball through the middle of the field, and like you said, run counter and play action and do those things. And it was Isaac Moultrie was our tailback, and he was an absolute stud. He still is a great kid. I still talk to him today, but he got injured in the Oak Harbor game in 07, and we lost the next 3 games in a row and missed the playoffs by 1 game. And I realized at the end of that season how we were, number one, just too reliant on the run game and really at our tailback position, and how we had to try to make some changes if we were going to continue to have some success. And what I really thought for the most part was, why were we playing against teams that year in, year out tended to be a little bit bigger than us? Snohomish was always really big. Arlington had big dudes. Marysville Pilchuck always had big dudes. Monroe had bigger dudes than us for the most part. And I felt like we were kind of banging our heads up against the wall, in that we tended to have speed and athleticism was kind of our strength, as I was reflecting through 05, 06, 07. But yet we were staying in the eye with the tight end and a fullback, and playing the 4-4 cover 3. And just we had the speed, but not always the size. I also felt like we had some really good young quarterbacks that were coming up through our Pee Wee programs and in middle school, and a young sophomore quarterback in Nick Baker, and thought, well, why are we running a system that maybe isn't best for the type of kids that we tend to get at Lake Stevens? And so in April of 2008, I took my whole staff to Los Angeles, and we went to a Tony Franklin clinic, which is a spread, no huddle, up tempo, throw a lot of screens, a lot of just intermediate one-step drop type throws with our quarterback out of the shotgun. And it just seemed to fit our style of kids. We have athletes and we have speed year in, year out. And I knew we had quarterbacks coming up. And so we wanted to be able to mix it up and throw the ball more, and really spread out defenses and force them to have to cover sideline to sideline. So horizontally have to cover the whole field, as well as being able to vertically stretch them with some of our deeper throw, our 3-step drops, and some of our longer pass games. So we went down and learned a whole new offense, which was crazy. It was quite a jump. Just knowing the history of Lake Stevens, we were a power I team. I coached under Ken Collins, who had a lot of success there. Like I said, they were in the state championship in '94. We had won a few league championships while I was there, and as an assistant in '99, 2000, and '01. And so it was a little bit nerve-wracking taking that leap of faith, going, okay, we're going to get rid of the eye, and here we are going to line up in shotgun and throw the ball 35 times a game and just be different. But I knew that would match the style of kids that we had. And so we took that leap of faith in '08, and we went down and learned a whole new offense, and I was basically a first-year head coach all over again as an offensive coordinator. Ironically enough, Rory Rosenbaugh got the head job at Glacier Peak, which had just opened up in '08 that same year. And we were the only 2 teams, I think, in the state at that point running the spread no huddle offense. And he had been running the Tony Franklin system at Marist and won a couple state championships down in Oregon before he got the head job at Glacier Peak. And so that summer, we went to a couple camps with Glacier Peak guys and with Coach Rohrbaugh, just trying to learn the offense and learning, because I knew he knew it better than I did. And I knew that they were going to be a league opponent, and we were trying to figure out what they were going to be good at and what we were going to be good at. And so we just went full throttle into the Tony Franklin system for that first year or two. But what I realized that we missed some of the things we were good at, the sweep, the counter trap, the play action that we ran out of the eye. And so we found ways to incorporate some of the things we did in 05, 06, 07 with our counter trap and our counter boot pass and our play action. And so we kind of morphed as I started to get more comfortable with the Franklin system into what I also knew was good in our run game and play action game. And so we've been doing that really ever since, where we're kind of yes, we run screens, and yes, it's very similar to the Tony Franklin system, some subtle differences. Our one-step and three-step drop game out of the shotgun, a lot of those are still heavily influenced by the Franklin system as well. But we've found ways to still run some of our I concepts out of the spread, and that was our power game, our counter trap, our counter boot, our play action, our fly sweep. So we've kind of morphed into a combination of things that knew we were pretty good at out of the eye, and then things that we thought were pretty good that we took from the Franklin system. And really, we haven't changed much since 2013. And so I'm getting off track here a little bit, but in 2013, we had a freshman quarterback named Jacob Eason. Well, the original Tony Franklin system, when you run zone and stretch, you would read the backside in, and the quarterback could pull and keep and run the ball as well. Well, that was not a strength for Jacob Eason. And so his freshman year, we went back down to LA again, Tony Franklin seminar or clinic in LA. And he had just started implementing the RPOs, the run pass option. And so we went down and learned that system under Franklin again. I think we were one of the first teams in the state that were doing it. And that fit our style of quarterback, or at least for the next 3 years with Jacob Eason. And we've been running RPOs ever since. So that's really the morph, just trying to mix in what I know that we're pretty good at with our run game and our play action, but also being able to spread the defense out, run our screen game, our one-step and three-step drop passing game that we run. It's still Franklin concepts as well. But what I've noticed is now, with a quarterback that can run the ball, we had Colton Masson for the last 3.5 years, and now Blake Moser this year. Now we can do a little bit of both. We'll RPO it with our zone and stretch concepts, but we can also read zone it now with our quarterback that can run the ball. And so we're doing a little bit of everything right now, and just trying to find things that work, and talking with other coaches and going to clinics and seeing what has worked for other successful programs. Why reinvent the wheel? We just steal things from other programs and we run those concepts. So I think last night we threw a slow slide fade that I stole from Linden from Van Dalen. A couple years ago, they ran it against us in a jamboree, and it worked really well. And so we'll take things from other programs that we know work, and we just add it to our own playbook. And yeah, you have to be able to coach it well, and you have to understand it if you're going to try to run those things. But if you take the time to go to the clinics and talk with other coaches and really understand the strategy behind those plays and those formations, why not add them to your arsenal?
I love it. I always was looking to tweak things and add things. How much though is too much? And at what point do you have to say, okay, if we're going to add this, we have to take this thing out, right? I'm sure defenses don't love that you do, zone read and RPO, right? They'd like it to be one or the other. So, but where's that balance of, okay, we've got too much, we're overloading the kids. How do you make it so your kids understand all the concepts?
That is a great question. And we found out this year that we put a little too much in for a first year quarterback. and we were putting a little bit too much stress on Blake Mosher. Great athlete, great quarterback, super proud of him. Found a way to beat Sumner, found a way to beat Bellevue, but we wanted to utilize his athleticism, and so yeah, we had the RPOs in, yeah, we had a couple read zone plays in, but I also found out that you can't put too much in, and so at practice we had to kind of take some things out, like you said, that we're usually pretty good at, and just thought, you know what? Well, why don't we wait till week 4, week 5, week 6 to start adding some of those older concepts that we were running and just focus on what our strengths of our team was going to be this year. But you're right. Like, we had to kind of look at ourselves in the mirror a little bit and go, okay, we're doing too much right now. And so we simplified things. Luckily, we kind of figured that out right around when two-a-days were just finishing up. So we still had one more week to prepare for Sumner before we had to play them. But no, we added 2 new concepts this year. A buck sweep concept, for example, where we're pulling both guards. Well, we ran it, I think, 2 times in 4 games, because both times we ran it, we weren't very good at it. We weren't very good at it in practice. And even though I like the concept, I realized that it's just too much.
Yep.
So what's wrong with counter trap? What's wrong with fly sweep? Like, we're good at those things. Why aren't we just running those things to get to the edge or get off tackle? So, even after 21 years of doing this and feeling like I'm a veteran coach and have a pretty good feel for things, we're not afraid to innovate still, but at the same time realize that sometimes too much is too much, and we got to simplify things and just adapt to the strengths of our players. And so even though we have some new concepts in this year, we haven't really run them much, because I feel like the old way was working pretty well, and our quarterback felt more comfortable with the old way, being that he's a first-year first-year starting quarterback. And so we've kind of just gone back to what we have been doing in previous years that have worked for us.
Yeah, great. You mentioned Jacob Skinny Eason and his, people that know this area. I mean, he was recruited all over the place, ends up going to Georgia and then working his way back to UW. And currently I think you've got players that are on, Oregon and Wake Forest and Nevada, PLU, Central, Eastern, Pacific, all over the place, right? You've had guys again in the past, UW, Georgia, Wazoo. So you've had a lot of experience with colleges coming in recruiting. So I have a couple of questions on that end. One, is there any just kind of crazy recruitment stories when, maybe Jacob was coming through that stand out to you?
Yeah. Well, with the state of Washington, we're not allowed to start our spring camps until June 1st, or until spring sports are over, which is always Memorial Day weekend, right? Well, most colleges at least at the D1 level, they can't come in June. They have to be done recruiting. June becomes a dead period for them. And so when schools were recruiting Jacob, we had to create a after school throwing session for the quarterback and a couple of our receivers. And I wasn't allowed to run it because it's during the off season. So I was just standing there being a bystander and watching. But as I look over my shoulder, there's Phil Fulmer from Tennessee. There's Lane Kiffin. There's Saban was there. Harbaugh was there. And I'm just looking and I'm like, these are the best coaches in the country. And they're standing on my field right now talking to me about this 6'5" skinny Jacob Eason and watching him throw the ball, and their jaws are just dropping as he's throwing 65-yard bombs down the field. And I'm thinking, wow, this is a pretty cool deal.
Yeah.
I'm missing a few coaches there too. I think I can't remember who the head coach at Oregon was. It was before Lanning, but he was there too. It wasn't Chip Kelly. I'm drawing a blank right now, but just looking at the amount of coaches that were there. To Harbaugh, I spent an hour and a half on a Friday night. Well, actually, it was a little bit longer than that, but Jacob played basketball too. And so Harbaugh showed up after school on a Friday thinking he was going to talk to Jacob. Well, we had an early release, so Jacob had already left and went home. So he decided that he was just going to hang out with me at school until Jacob had a basketball game at 7:30 at night. And so we were in my office just on a whiteboard drawing up X's and O's and talking scheme. And I'm thinking, wow, what is the head coach at Michigan doing in my office draw and just having a whiteboard session and just talking football and talking about life. And so, yeah, there were a lot of cool things like that have happened just because of the recruiting
Yeah.
process.
Very cool. And maybe the All-American game coaching came along kind of with that as well. What was that experience like for you going and coaching in that Army All-American game?
Oh, just super honored to be a part of that game. I was the offensive coordinator. That was January 2016, uh, down in San Antonio. Some great high school football coaches, and obviously top notch. I mean, the best players in the nation. Uh, Having DK Metcalf as a wide receiver, Dexter Lawrence as a defensive tackle. Uh, just a ton of guys. I think 4 of the 5 offensive linemen we have are still starting in the NFL right now. So yeah, it was an amazing experience just being able to go down and listen and learn from some of the other great coaches from around the nation. There was a little, I wouldn't call it a setback, but the head coach, Kramer, who was a great dude from Naples, Florida. Well, he was a midline veer option guy.
Hmm.
And, here I am as an offensive coordinator coming in the spread, no huddle, one back, didn't want tight ends. We wanted to throw the ball around. And so there was a little bit of we had to have a little trust factor about, yes, like trust this process. It will work. We don't have to line up with 2 backs and a tight end and go under center in all-star game, an all-American game is what it
Right.
was. Uh, but it was an interesting process, just kind of learning and compromising and having to pick his brain, and he would pick my brain. And we only had 6 days before we had to play a game. And quite honestly, they were more worried about all the promotional pieces, the taking of the pictures and talking with sponsors. And I just wanted to get out on the field and practice because
Mhm.
I knew that we were trying to implement a whole system in 5.5 to 6 days, and just trying to gain the head coach's trust that we can do this and it's going to be all right. So really cool experience for sure. And would love to have the opportunity to do something like that again if it ever happens again.
Yeah, really cool. So with recruitment, things have changed since the NIL has come along and with the transfer rule opening things up. So what have you noticed differently over the last, let's say, 5 years from what it was before? And what do you do to help your players get the opportunity to be recruited at the highest level that they can achieve?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I feel like it's a little bit of the wild, wild west going on still right now with recruiting. And I say that in that there's doesn't feel like there's any rules, with kids getting money. And uh, I feel like I think the state of Washington should make some changes, uh, whether either the NCAA needs to allow a recruiting period in June so that they can actually come and watch our spring camps and practices, or we need to try to move it up, which I don't think is a good idea because you still have spring sports going on. So that's a little bit of the problem. But I think what's happening now is kids are now doing more like 7-on-7 outside of, whether it's ETA or whether it's the FSP or air or which is good. I'm not saying those are bad things. I don't mind our kids going and doing those things. But then you have college coaches talking maybe to those programs and not as much to the high school coaches who may know the kids at a much more intimate level. Yes, they still show up. I mean, we get schools coming all the time in February, March, and April, and during that heavy recruiting process. And it's a really cool deal. Uh, but I think that I don't want to say the system is broken, but I do think that I'm hoping that we can maybe make some changes in the future years because with the NIL and the transfer portal, it's just, I feel like you spend 2 or 3 years developing a kid and getting them ready to be a starter, and then they just transfer somewhere else.
Mhm.
And so what I'm seeing now is that's been happening for a couple of years at the college level, and now you're even starting to see that at the high school level. And that kind of bums me out because I got into coaching out of like being a kid growing up in South Everett. The playing with the kids that you grew up with in your community. That's what high school football was to me.
Mhm.
And even at Seaholm and in Bellingham and then at Meadowdale and then at Lake Stevens for the 26 years I've been there, like that's part of the community. Like you want to play with the kids that you grew up with in Pee Wee football and eighth grade football, ninth grade football, and now with the transfer rule, uh, I just that worries me that the haves become stronger and the have-nots become weaker because and those have-nots who might spend 2 to 3 years developing that kid so that they can become a varsity starter and a good football player and a great human being, all of a sudden now they're transferring to another school. And I, I don't want to talk bad about the transfer rule because I understand it, but I'm cautious about what kind of impact it's going to have on high school football as we're kind of learning this year. And we have a few kids that transferred to Lake Stevens this year, some good ones.
Mhm.
So I mean, I'm as guilty as any in that it's happening with us too. But uh, it just there's just some cautionary flags right now with what's going on at the college level, which is now trending down to the high school level.
Yeah, I couldn't
I don't know
agree
if I
more.
answered that question very well,
Well,
but
no, you did great, and it's the Coaches Association board. We met and had a time several days together, and we brought in a couple of guys from the Texas Coaches Association, and they have a system there where if college coaches don't talk to the high school coach but work through outside guys, they will shut them down and say you can't come in here anymore. Now they're bigger, they're and they have more athletes and so forth, but they really want to make sure that you're talking to the high school coaches who know the history, know the family. They've invested so much into them, and not what could amount at sometimes to street agents or other people. So yeah, I'm in agreement with you on that. Um, and of course, if it is a system, you aren't going to turn away a talented kid who shows up at your door, and with the program you've developed, those kids are going to show up, right? But tell me about your current roster size, and you're only a 10 through 12 high school, right? Your freshmen go to Cavallero Middle School or mid high, if I remember that correctly. So, what's your roster size, 10 through 12? How do you get that amount of kids out? How do you keep them? What kind of attrition rate do you have? And then I'm guessing tied into that is youth program. What do you do for your youth program, and how important is that to developing what you've done at Lake Stevens?
huge. So our current rosters, we have 77 players, 10 through 12, uh, that are turning out. We suit up about 60 to 62 of them on a Friday night. So there are a few sophomores in our program that don't suit up on Friday nights, which is unfortunate. But that's our traditions. You have to, if you're a sophomore, you have to earn the right to get the helmet stickers and suit up on Friday nights. Uh, but we have a JV program that plays every Monday. So we make sure that those kids are getting an opportunity to play as well. We are at 40-ish at the freshman level. So between our freshmen and varsity group, we're at about 110 kids total in our program. It is a little unfortunate that our mid-high is a separate campus, and so I don't get to see some of those freshmen on a daily basis. But we do bring up a few freshmen. I think this year we have 4 that we moved up to play JV. So they come over on a bus right after school and get dressed in our locker room and then come out to our practice and come out about it's about 5. They come up about 5 minutes late every day, but we make it work out. Uh, it, the big piece for us is I meet with our youth coaches at least 3, 4, 5 times a year. We'll meet usually in March or April, and then we meet again in May. We'll meet in June or July or both of those months, and we go through our offensive playbook. We go through our defensive playbook. We talk about the system that we're hoping that the youth programs run. We give them a playbook. We talk about our wristbands and kind of how we call our plays, just to give them an idea so that the kids are kind of learning our system at a very young level. I've also hired a few youth coaches into my staff throughout the years. Started with Jeff Palcola way back in the day. Went to Rich Bardu, Noah Pester, Noah French. We've had quite a few guys that all started at the youth program. And I just got to know them through meeting them in the off season where we'd go have a cup of coffee and we start talking about just our system and what we're doing and how we do it and how we run practices and what practice plans should look like and be organized. And I feel like that's really given us a huge advantage throughout the years. And quite honestly, I remember I stole that concept from Terry Ennis and from Dick Armstrong from Snohomish. So I remember as a player back in the day how well coached Snohomish was, and they ran the wing tee better than anybody. Now we didn't know who Bellevue was at the time, but they had a system and they knew it really well. And I remember as a youth kid going up to the Boys and Girls Club playing Snohomish, and they ran the same offense that the varsity did at the high school. And so back in '06 and '07, when I first started my first year was '05, but I wasn't quite smart enough my first 2 years to reach out to the youth program just because I had a lot on the plate and was pretty busy at that point, didn't know how to delegate very well yet. And so I realized like I was kind of missing the boat there. And so since 2008, we've been meeting at least 2 to 3 to 4 or 5 times a year with our youth coaches and just opening up our playbook, opening up our session, letting them ask as many questions. Coach Dinwiddie has always been there with me as well since he's been our D coordinator. And we just meet with the youth program. We also run a Pee Wee camp right after our team camp in June. It's a 4-day camp that's 2.5 hours each day. It's as young as 8 and as old as 14. So you get basically all the youth kids are coming. We had 230 kids show up last year to our youth program. And so not only do we run the same drills that we run at the varsity practices, just at a simplified level, but we also invite all the youth coaches to come and watch and stand and take notes and record some of the drills that we're running for those youth kids at that youth camp. And really, it's our players who are acting as coaches who are running the drills for the youth kids, which I think is great as well, because now our current players who are acting as coaches, they understand the drills that we're going to put them through in August and September. They're going to understand it a lot better because they've actually coached it. Mm-hmm. And so that's been a nice little multiplier effect where our kids, they get to know the older kids, they look up to them, they come down on our fields on Friday nights and take pictures with the kids that used to coach them at the Pee Wee camp. So our numbers are great. It's a nice little fundraiser as well. Not that we charge much, but if we don't have really any costs, so it's a nice little fundraiser for us as well. But most importantly, it's just building community, and I think that's a huge piece. Like I said, we invite all the youth coaches to show up, and not all of them show up, but there's probably 10 to 15 of them there taking pictures, taking notes, asking questions throughout the drills that we run at the Pee Wee camp. So that's a big part of, I think, our continued success as well.
Great. I'll give you a couple of questions. You can choose which one you want to answer here. One is core principles, standards that you just say, this is Lake Stevens football. These are things that we demand to be done. And or 2022, you started the year 2-2. You had a bad loss to West Lynn out of Oregon, powerhouse down there, 45-6. And the season could have gone south, and yet you end up going and running the table and winning your first state title, and then going back to back. So maybe you could answer that question of how did you handle that in 2022 to, what was the key to being that the first time you won, and then you go on to win back-to-back state titles at that point. So choose one of those two. Core principles, how do you teach it? Or give me that 2022, what happened there and how'd you turn that team around?
Sure. I'll give you an abbreviated version of the core principles. First of all, communication is huge for us as a core principle. Teaching kids to communicate is, I think, a huge, it's extremely important. If you want to be successful in life, you have to be able to communicate. Hard work is another one of our core principles. Being able to out-prepare our opponents. Doesn't matter who we're playing. It's not about them. It's about us. And we're going to outwork as many teams as we possibly can. The other one is to tell the truth. Be honest about yourself. Are you truly working hard? Are you really in the right position? Are you What are you reading your scouting report? Are you watching huddle? Are you taking accountability for being a team first player? So those are are really our three core principles: communicate, hard work, and being accountable to your teammates.
Mhm.
Uh, in 2022, uh, we were 2-2. We lost to Garfield, beat Bellevue, lost to Westland, and then started our league up from that. What most people don't probably remember is I made a mistake as a coach. We tried. I'm a big believer in finding one quarterback.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, like we had two, and we started two, and so Colton Matson and we had a kid named Caden LaPlante who was another great quarterback who ended up transferring to Granite Falls because Colton became the starter for us. But in that year, we were given both of them equal reps. Well, neither one of them was probably performing to their potential because we were splitting reps. And so as we were trying to figure out who the starting quarterback should be, the age old adage, if you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. Well, that kind of happened to us. And so we lost to Garfield week 1. We lost to Westland week 3 or week 4. I can't remember what year or what week we played them, but that was on me as much as it was on the kids, in that we didn't do a very good job of figuring out who our quarterback really should be, because we were trying to give both of them a chance, and Caden had earned that right as much as Colton had, and so we were playing around with the two quarterback system, and we found out that we weren't as good on offense as we needed to be. And finally, after being 2-2, we're like, okay, nope, we got to make a decision here. And so we went with Colton for the rest of the year, and we just instantly got better with our chemistry, our timing, our execution. And that was unfortunate for Caden because he was a heck of a quarterback too, but Colton had just beat him out fair and square, and Colton had a little bit better feet and allowed us to be a little bit more mobile in our sprint out packages that we run, as well as some of the run pass option things that we're doing, as well as some of the read zone option that Colton, we knew that he had good feet. And so he was the sophomore that year, and Caden was a junior that year. And so from that point on, once we named Colton starter, you could just see us week by week. We just continued to get better.
Mhm.
The guys trusted Colton. Jaden Lamar had an amazing year that year, and he was really our he was our workhorse for sure. And he was our captain and leader. But he did so many things, not just on the field but off the field for us, and we had great team chemistry that year. And so we learned our lesson the hard way, in that you got to find one quarterback that's going to work and try to give them as many reps as possible, so that your chemistry and your execution is there on Friday nights.
Well, that's awesome. I was not aware of that scenario that happened there, so it's news to me, and that's answering questions for a lot of coaches. I think that's a dilemma people come up with regularly, and I know I've had that situation as well, and I probably have made that mistake myself at times too. So, Coach, it's been great chatting with you. It's been awesome. What did I not ask that you would like to share, or is there advice that you would like to give as we close out?
Um, I would say the advice I would give is learn to delegate and learn to trust your coaches. Hire a great staff, hire a loyal staff.
Mm.
It's not so much about X's and O's as it is about, do they work well with kids, and are they loyal? Because I mean, we've had great coaches on my staff in previous years, but also coaches that maybe weren't as loyal as they needed to be. And I found out that if you mess with team chemistry, it doesn't matter how good you are, right? Culture beats strategy every day of the week. And so you better have good culture. Well, culture starts with your coaches, because they're the leaders of the program. And so your leaders, your coaches, better be loyal to what you're doing. You know, we went through some defensive issues with, should we be a cover 4 team, should we be a cover 3 team, or should we be a man team? Well, our D coordinator wanted to be a man guy, but we had defensive guys that thought we were better in cover 3 and cover 4, and so we would argue about that, and then we would switch halfway through the season, and then we'd go back to man again, and just. I think that's really important, that you have to get everybody on the same page, and they have to be loyal to what we're trying to accomplish. So that's a piece I probably didn't really understand as a younger coach, that I really have a much better feel of now as I've experienced and become more seasoned as the years go by. Culture is a huge piece of being successful, and we had to go through that. That was a huge emphasis for us this year, just because we had a young group coming back and a smaller senior class than we normally have. I think we only have 13 or 14 seniors this year, where we normally average about 20 to 25, 23-ish. And so we really had to emphasize working together. And so we did some team bonding things in the summertime that we didn't normally do, barbecues, going to the lake, doing some hikes, uh, going and playing laser tag, just doing things like that where you wouldn't normally do some of those things because it's not football related, but yet that huge piece of, hey, let's become a family. Let's work together. Let's trust each other and be accountable to one another. And those are our core values. And so we had to really work on some of those things in this off season. And I feel like we're in a good place right now, but it was by design. It didn't just happen that way. It was very intentional. And in all fairness, I got to give Coach Dinwiddie most of the credit there. He was the guy working behind the scenes for me, uh, just putting all those pieces together and messaging the kids on our band app that we have, and making sure the kids knew when to be there and how to be there and what the expectations were. And it's now paying off for us.
Yeah. That's great advice, Coach. On the back of my shirts every year, we had "we" over "me," and that's from players to coaches. Like, how can we always put the team above any individual player or coach? I think it's important, as you said, like you've got to be on the same page. And there's times you may not be, but that's got to be in the coaches' meeting rooms, and it's left maybe on the weekends. And once we leave that room, whether you fully agree or not, you agree in front of the kids, never say anything otherwise. And, you can have those conversations because you want to have good conversations. You're not going to agree on everything, but it's got to be united front when you go out in front of the kids. So, Coach,
100%.
I appreciate you. Pleasure to call you a friend. And thank you again for the times you've allowed me to come out and check out your team up close, and best of luck this season.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate you having me. I'm honored. Anything you ever need, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help out and pay it forward, just like Terry Ennis did for me way back in the day.
Great. Thank you, Coach.
You bet. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate you.